A manuscript by Thomas Taylor contains a remarkable passage concerning Plato's initiation. According to the text, Plato underwent initiation into the greater mysteries when he reached a mature stage in life. This initiation occurred within the subterranean chambers of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. The altar before which the divine Plato stood was formed by the Zodiac table, through which he received what was always inherent to him, but which the ceremony of the mysteries awakened from its dormant state. After spending several days in the great hall, he ascended and was granted an audience with the hierophant of the pyramid, a figure visible only to those who had completed the full rite, transcending the 3 degrees or dimensions. During this encounter, Plato was orally imparted the highest esoteric teachings, each accompanied by its corresponding symbol. Following a prolonged period of stay within the pyramid's halls, the initiate Plato was sent forth into the world to carry out the work of the Great Order, continuing the legacy of Pythagoras and Orpheus before him. Prior to the sack of Rome, there is no historical record of the Mensa Isioca, also known as the Tablet of Isis. It came into the possession of a locksmith or ironworker who sold it at a great price to Cardinal Bembo, a renowned antiquarian and historiographer of Venice, later librarian of St. Mark's. Upon Cardinal Bembo's death, the tablet passed to the House of Mantua, where it remained until the city's capture by the forces of Ferdinand II. Some early authors mistakenly believed the tablet was destroyed by soldiers seeking its silver, but this was incorrect. Instead, it was obtained by Cardinal Pover, who presented it to the Duke of Savoy, who subsequently gave it to the King of Sardinia. When the French conquered Italy, the tablet was taken to Paris and was displayed at the Bibliothèque Nationale. After peace was restored, it was returned to Italy. A guide to northern Italy notes the Mensa Isioca as being exhibited prominently in the Museum of Antiquities at Turin. A faithful reproduction of the original tablet was created by the celebrated Ennius Vicus of Parma in the mid-16th century, and a copy of this engraving was gifted by the Chancellor of the Duke of Bavaria to the Museum of Hieroglyphics. Descriptions by scholars such as Athanasius Kircher note the tablet's dimensions and materials, describing it as made of bronze with enamel and silver inlay. The figures on the tablet are shallowly engraved and outlined with silver threads. The bases where these figures were seated or reclined were silver, but have since been lost. Those versed in Hermetic philosophy recognize the Mensa Isioca as a key to understanding the theology of Chaldean, Egyptian, and Greek traditions. Father Montfaucon, in his Antiquities, admits his difficulty in interpreting its complex symbolism and doubts the emblems hold any meaningful significance, even mocking Kircher's attempts as more obscure than the tablet itself. Laurentius Pignorius reproduced the tablet with a descriptive essay in the early 17th century, but his cautious explanations revealed a lack of true understanding regarding the figure's meanings. In his work Oedipus Egyptiochus, Kircher approached the problem with characteristic eagerness. Having dedicated many years to studying the secret doctrines of antiquity, and supported by a group of distinguished scholars, Kircher made significant progress toward explaining the mysteries of the tablet. Nevertheless, the master secret remained beyond his grasp, as Eliphas Levi insightfully observed in his History of Magic. Levi wrote that the learned Jesuit intuited the tablet contained the hieroglyphic key to sacred alphabets, though he was unable to fully articulate the explanation. The tablet is divided into 3 equal sections. The upper part displays the 12 houses of heaven. Beneath these are the corresponding periods of labor throughout the year, and centrally positioned are 21 sacred signs corresponding to alphabetic letters. At the center sits the pantomorphic figure of the Inks, emblematic of universal being and identified with the Hebrew Yod, the unique letter from which all others derive. Surrounding the Inks is the Ophite triad, corresponding to the 3 mother letters found in Egyptian and Hebrew alphabets. To the right are the Ibomorphic and Serapion triads. To the left, the triads of Nephthys and Hecate, representing active and passive forces, fixed and volatile elements, fructifying fire and generating water. Each pair of triads combined with the center creates a septenary, while a septenary also resides within the center itself. These 3 septenaries represent the totality of the 3 worlds and the complete set of primitive letters, to which a complementary sign is added, much like 0 to the 9 numerals. Levi's suggestion may imply that the 21 figures in the central section correspond to the 21 major trumps of the tarot deck. If so, then the enigmatic 0 card, the source of much debate, might be seen as the nameless crown of the supreme mind, symbolized by the hidden triad atop the throne in the table's center. Perhaps the first emanation of this supreme mind is represented by a magician or juggler, displaying the symbols of the 4 lower worlds before him: the rod, sword, cup, and coin. Seen this way, the 0 card stands apart from the others, embodying the 4th dimensional origin from which the rest emanate, and which is divided into the 21 cards, letters, that, when united, recreate the 0. The cipher on this card, a circle, supports this view, symbolizing the superior sphere from which the lower worlds, powers, and letters flow. W. Wynne Westcott gathered the sparse theories proposed by various authorities and published a rare volume in the late 19th century, containing the only thorough English description of the Zodiac tablet since a translation of Montfaucon's inadequate account in the early 18th century. Explaining his reluctance to reveal what Levi believed should remain concealed, Westcott summarized his interpretation of the tablet as follows. Levi's diagram portrays the upper region divided into the 4 seasons, each associated with 3 zodiac signs, and includes the 4-letter sacred name, the Tetragrammaton. He assigns Jad to Aquarius, represented as Canopus, He to Taurus, represented as Apis, Vov to Leo, Momphta, and the final He to Typhon. There is a notable parallel with the cherubic figures: man, bull, lion, and eagle. The 4th form may appear as either the scorpion or eagle, depending on occult intent, good or evil. In the demotic zodiac, the snake replaces the scorpion. The lower region is attributed to the 12 simple Hebrew letters, which are linked to the 4 quarters of the horizon. The central region is attributed to the solar and planetary powers. At its center, above is the sun, marked with the word Ops, and below it appears Solomon's seal above a cross, a double triangle hexapla, formed by 1 light and 1 dark triangle superposed, creating a complex symbol associated with Venus. To the Ibomorphos triad are assigned the 3 dark planets, Venus, Mercury, and Mars, arranged around a dark, upright triangle that signifies fire. Conversely, the Nephthyian triad is linked to 3 light planets, Saturn, Luna, and Jupiter, positioned around a light, inverted triangle symbolizing water. There is a fundamental connection between water, feminine power, the passive principle, Bina, and the Sephirotic mother and bride, as elaborated in Mather's Kabbalah. The ancient planetary symbols all incorporate a cross, solar disk, and crescent. Venus is represented by a cross beneath a sun disk. Mercury combines a disk with a crescent above and cross below. Saturn shows a cross touching the apex of a crescent at its lowest point. Jupiter features a crescent touching the left end of a cross. These symbols embody profound mysteries. It is worth noting that Levi's original plate swapped the positions of Serapis and Hecate, but did not alter Apis Noir and Apis Blanc, possibly because he associated the head of Bes with Hecate. Having linked the 12 simple letters to the lower region, the 7 double letters correspond to the central planetary region. The great triad AMS, the mother letters representing air, water, and fire, remains to be depicted around the central inks or yord, embraced by the Ophionian triad of 2 serpents and the Leonine Sphinx. Levi's inscription OPS at the center refers to the Latin Ops, the genius of the earth, and the Greek Ops, Rhea or Kybele, Cybele, often portrayed as a goddess seated in a chariot drawn by lions, crowned with turrets and holding a key. An essay published in French by Alexander Lenoir in the early 19th century is curious and original, but offers little substantive information about the tablet. Lenoir argued that the tablet was an Egyptian calendar or astrological chart. Since Montfaucon, Lenoir, and virtually all writers on the subject since the mid-17th century based their work on Kircher or were heavily influenced by him, a careful translation has been made of Kircher's original article, spanning 80 pages of 17th century Latin. A. E. Waite, unable to distinguish between the tablet's true nature and the claims about its origin, echoes the opinion of J. G. Wilkinson, a noted scholar of exoteric matters. The original tablet is exceedingly late and is roughly termed a forgery. Conversely, Eduard Winkelmann, a scholar of profound learning, defends the tablet's authenticity and ancient origin. A careful examination of the Mensa Isiaka reveals one paramount fact. Although its creator may not have been Egyptian, he was undoubtedly a high-ranking initiate, well versed in the most arcane teachings of Hermetic esotericism. The following necessarily brief explanation of the Bembine Table is drawn primarily from the writings of Kircher, supplemented by insights gathered by the present author from the mystical traditions of the Chaldeans, Hebrews, Egyptians, and Greeks. Egyptian temples were constructed so that every element, the layout of chambers, the decorations, and the utensils, held symbolic meaning, as evident in the hieroglyphics that adorned them. Beside the altar, typically positioned at the center of each chamber, was a cistern containing Nile water, which flowed through concealed pipes. These temples also housed images of the gods arranged in continuous sequences, accompanied by magical inscriptions. Through these symbols and hieroglyphics, neophytes were taught the secret knowledge of the sacerdotal caste. The Tablet of Isis originally functioned as a table or altar, with its emblems forming part of the mysteries revealed by priests. Altars were consecrated to various gods and goddesses. In this instance, Isis was honored. The materials used to craft these tables varied according to the relative status of the deity. Tables dedicated to Jupiter and Apollo were fashioned from gold, those for Diana, Venus, and Juno from silver, others for superior gods were made of marble, and those for lesser divinities from wood. Some tables were also made from metals corresponding to the planets ruled by their respective celestial patrons. Just as a banquet table offers sustenance for the body, these sacred altars displayed symbols that, when understood, nourished the invisible nature of humanity. Kircher, in his introduction to the table, summarizes its symbolism as follows. It primarily teaches the constitution of the threefold world: archetypal, intellectual, and sensible. The supreme divinity is depicted as moving from the center to the circumference of a universe composed of both sensible and insensible things, all animated and stirred by a single supreme power, referred to as the Father Mind and represented by a threefold symbol. Also depicted are three triads emanating from the Supreme One, each expressing an attribute of the first Trimurti. These triads are regarded as the foundation, or base, of all things. The table further displays the arrangement and distribution of divine beings who assist the Father Mind in governing the universe. In the upper panel are seen the governors of the worlds, each bearing fiery, ethereal, and material insignia. The lower panel presents the Fathers of Fountains, entrusted with preserving the principles of all things and upholding the immutable laws of nature. Also depicted are the gods of the spheres and those who wander through places, working with all substances and forms, Zonia and Azonia, arranged as figures of both sexes, facing their superior deity. The Mensa Isiaka is divided horizontally into three chambers or panels, which may correspond to the architectural plan of the chambers where the Isiac mysteries were enacted. The central panel is subdivided into 7 smaller compartments or rooms, and the lower panel features 2 gates, one at each end. The entire table contains 45 principal figures and numerous lesser symbols. These 45 main figures are grouped into 15 triads, distributed across the panels, some in the upper, more in the central, and others in the lower panel. Both Kircher and Levi agree on the division of these triads into specific groups within each section. Of these 15 triads, Kircher explains that the figures differ in 8 highly significant ways: their form, position, gesture, action, raiment, headdress, staff, and the hieroglyphics surrounding them, whether flowers, shrubs, small letters, or animals. These 8 symbolic modes of depicting the secret powers of the figures serve as subtle reminders of the 8 spiritual senses of cognition through which the real self in man can be understood. To express this spiritual truth, the Buddhists used the wheel with 8 spokes and sought to elevate their consciousness by following the noble eightfold path. The ornate border framing the 3 main panels of the table contains numerous symbols: birds, animals, reptiles, humans, and composite creatures. One interpretation views this border as representing the 4 elements, with the creatures symbolizing elemental beings. Another reading suggests that the border represents the archetypal spheres, and the frieze of composite figures displays the archetypal forms that, in various combinations, will later manifest in the material world. The 4 flowers positioned at the table's corners are sacred emblems of the finer aspects of human nature, as their blossoms always turn toward the sun, following its course across the sky, symbolizing that part of man which delights in facing its creator. According to the secret teachings of the Chaldeans, the universe is divided into 4 states of being, or planes: archetypal, intellectual, sidereal, and elemental. Each plane reveals and influences the others. The superior governs the inferior, while the inferior receives influence from the superior. The archetypal plane is synonymous with the intellect of the triune divinity. Within this divine, incorporeal, and eternal realm exist all lower manifestations of life, everything that is, was, or will be. Within the cosmic intellect, all spiritual and material things exist as archetypes or divine thought forms, represented on the table by a chain of secret similes. In the table's central region appears the all-encompassing personified spiritual essence, the source and substance of all things. From this essence proceed the lower worlds as 9 emanations grouped in threes, known as the Ophionic, Ibomorphous, and Nephtian triads. This arrangement parallels the Kabbalistic Sephiroth, 9 spheres issuing from Kether, the crown. The 12 governors of the universe, represented by the Mendezian, Ammonian, Momphtian, and Omphtian triads in the table's upper region, act as vehicles for distributing creative influences. Their activities are directed by the divine mind's archetypal patterns. These archetypes are abstract forms conceived in the divine mind, through which all subordinate actions are governed. In the lower region of the table reside the father fountains, embodied by the Hyriean, Pandicean, Thostic, and Eleuristic triads, who serve as custodians of the universe's great gates. They are responsible for distributing the descending influences from the governors above to the lower worlds. In Egyptian theology, goodness holds the highest place, and all things partake in its nature to varying degrees. Goodness is universally sought and is regarded as the prime cause of all causes. It is self-diffused, existing within everything, since nothing can produce what it does not inherently possess. The table illustrates that all is contained in God and God is present in all, that everything is interconnected and each element exists within every other. In the intellectual realm dwell invisible spiritual counterparts to the creatures of the elemental world. Thus, the lowest reflects the highest, the physical reveals the intellectual, and the unseen is made manifest through its works. For this reason, the Egyptians fashioned images of substances found in the lower sensible world to serve as visible representatives of superior, invisible powers. They assigned to these perishable images the virtues of incorruptible divinities, subtly demonstrating that this world is merely a shadow of God, an outward reflection of the paradise within. Everything contained within the invisible archetypal sphere is revealed in the tangible corporeal world by the light of nature. The archetypal and creative mind, first through its paternal foundation and then through secondary divine beings called intelligences, poured forth an infinite flow of its powers by continuous exchange from highest to lowest. In their symbolic language, the Egyptians used sperm to represent the spiritual spheres, as each contains all that proceeds from it. The Chaldeans and Egyptians also believed that everything which results dwells within its own cause and turns to that cause as the lotus turns to the sun. Accordingly, the supreme intellect, through its paternal foundation, first created light, the angelic realm. From that light emerged the invisible hierarchies of beings sometimes identified as stars. From the stars were then formed the 4 elements and the sensible world. Thus, all exist within one another according to their kind. All visible bodies or elements are contained within the invisible stars or spiritual elements, and the stars are likewise within those bodies. Stars exist in angels, angels in stars, angels dwell in God, and God is in all. Therefore, all are divinely within the divine, angelically within the angels, corporeally within the corporeal world, and vice versa. Just as the seed contains the tree enfolded within, so the world is God unfolded. Proclus states, "Every property of divinity permeates all creation and imparts itself to all inferior creatures." One expression of the supreme mind is the power of reproduction according to species, which it grants to every creature that contains a divine part. Thus, souls, heavens, elements, animals, plants, and stones generate themselves in accordance with their own patterns, but all depend on the one fertilizing principle residing in the supreme mind. Though this fecundative power is a unit, it manifests diversely among substances. In minerals, it sustains material existence. In plants, it expresses as vitality. In animals, as sensibility. It moves the heavenly bodies, imparts thought to human souls, intellectuality to angels, and superessentiality to God. Hence, all forms share one substance, and all life arises from one force, coexisting in the nature of the Supreme One. This doctrine was initially presented by Plato. His student Aristotle expressed it thus: "The sensible world is an image of another world. Since this world is vivid and alive, that other world must be even more so. Beyond the stellar virtues exist higher heavens, comparable to those of this world, but of a superior nature, brighter and more vast, and unlike this world, they are not distant from one another because they are incorporeal. There, too, exists an earth, not composed of inert matter, but alive with animal life and natural terrestrial phenomena akin to those here, though of different kinds and greater perfection. There are also plants, gardens, and flowing waters. Aquatic creatures exist, yet of nobler species. The air there carries immortal life. Though analogous to our own, this life is nobler, intellectual, eternal, and unchanging. If one questions how such plants and beings find footing in that higher realm, the answer is that they lack objective existence as we understand it, being created by the primal author in an absolute, unmanifested state. Like intellect and soul, they are free from decay or corruption, filled instead with energy, strength, and joy, living a sublime existence originating from a single source and quality, compounded of harmonious qualities such as sweet scents, delicate perfumes, colors, sounds, and other perfections. They do not move violently, mingle, or corrupt one another. Each perfectly preserves its essential nature. They are simple and do not reproduce as physical beings do. At the center of the table sits a great covered throne with a seated female figure representing Isis, here called the pantomorphic inks. G.R.S. Mead defines the inks as a transmitting intelligence, while others see it as a symbol of universal being. Above the goddess's head, the throne is crowned with a triple crown, and beneath her feet lies the house of material substance. The threefold crown symbolizes the triune divinity, referred to by the Egyptians as the Supreme Mind, described in the Sefer HaZohar as hidden and unrevealed. According to Hebrew Kabbalistic tradition, the tree of the Sephiroth divides into two parts, the upper, invisible portion, and the lower, visible portion. The upper part contains three aspects: Kether, the crown, Chochmah, wisdom, and Bina, understanding, which are too abstract for direct comprehension. The lower seven spheres emanate from these and are accessible to human consciousness. The central panel depicts 7 triads of figures representing these lower Sephiroth, all emanating from the concealed threefold crown above the throne. Kircher writes that the throne signifies the diffusion of the triform Supreme Mind along the universal paths of the three worlds. From these 3 intangible spheres emerges the sensible universe, which Plutarch calls the House of Horns, and the Egyptians refer to as the Great Gate of the Gods. The top of the throne is surrounded by serpent-shaped flames, indicating that the Supreme Mind is filled with eternal, incorruptible light and life, untouched by material contact. The manner in which the Supreme Mind imparts its divine fire to all creatures is symbolized on the table. This divine fire is communicated to lower spheres through the universal power of nature, personified by the world virgin, Isis, here named the inks, or the polymorphous, all containing universal idea. The term idea is used in its Platonic meaning. Plato taught that eternal forms of all possible things exist without matter, and to these eternal, immaterial forms he gave the name ideas. In this sense, Ideas are the archetypal patterns by which the deity fashioned the phenomenal or ectopal world. Kircher describes the 21 figures in the central panel as 7 principal triads, each corresponding to 7 superior worlds. These triads all originate from the fiery, invisible archetype represented by the triple crown atop the throne. The first triad, known as the Ophionic or Inks triad, corresponds to the vital and fiery world and is regarded as the first intellectual world, which the ancients called the Etherium. Zoroaster spoke of it as a realm ruled by rigorous powers. The second triad, called the Ibomorphous triad, relates to the second intellectual or ethereal world and is associated with the principle of humidity. The third, the Nephtian triad, corresponds to the third intellectual and ethereal world, concerned with fecundity. These 3 triads represent the ethereal worlds, collectively linked to what is termed the Father Foundation. Following these are 4 triads representing the sensible or material worlds. The first 2 of these correspond to the sidereal worlds, Osiris and Isis, symbolized by the sun and moon and represented by 2 bulls. The remaining 2 triads, the Hecaton and the Serapean, correspond to the sublunary and subterranean worlds. Together, these complete the 7 worlds of primary genii who govern the natural universe. Psellus quotes Zoroaster in explaining that the Egyptians and Chaldeans taught the existence of 7 corporeal worlds ruled by intellectual powers, the first of pure fire, the next 3 ethereal, and the last 3 material. The 7th world is terrestrial, hating light, located beneath the moon, and contains what is called the foundation matter. These 7 worlds, combined with the invisible crown, constitute the total 8 worlds. Plato wrote that philosophers must understand the arrangement of the 7 circles beneath the highest one, as described by the Egyptians. The first triad of fire signifies life, the second, water, governed by the Ibomorphous divinities, and the third, air, ruled by Nephta. From fire arose the heavens, from water the earth, with air serving as the mediator between them. In the Sephira Yetzirah it is said that from these 3 arise the 7 directions: height, depth, east, west, north, south, and the holy temple at the center supporting them all. The holy temple at the center is interpreted as the great throne of the many-formed spirit of nature shown in the middle of the table. The 7 triads symbolize the 7 powers ruling over the world. Psellus writes that the Egyptians worshipped a triad of faith, truth, and love, along with 7 fountains: the sun as ruler, the fountain of matter, the archangels, the senses, judgment, lightning, reflections, and characters of unknown composition. The highest material fountains correspond to Apollo, Osiris, and Mercury, the centers of the elements. Thus, the solar world is represented by the sun as ruler, the lunar world by the material archangelic fountain, Saturn's world by the senses, Jupiter's by judgment, Mars by lightning, Venus by reflections or mirrors, and Mercury's by characters. These are all depicted by the figures in the central panel of the table. The upper panel contains 12 zodiacal figures arranged in 4 triads. Each group's central figure represents one of the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac: Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio. These are known as the Fathers. In the secret teachings of the Far East, these 4 figures, the man, the bull, the lion, and the eagle, are called the winged globes or the 4 Maharajas who stand at the corners of creation. The 4 cardinal signs, Capricorn, Aries, Cancer, and Libra, are called the powers. The 4 common signs, Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius, are referred to as the minds of the 4 lords. This explains the meaning of the winged globes of Egypt, where the 4 central figures, Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio, referred to by Ezekiel as the cherubim, form the globes, and the cardinal and common signs on either side form the wings. Hence, the 12 signs of the zodiac can be symbolized as 4 globes, each bearing 2 wings. The celestial triads are depicted by the Egyptians as a globe, called the Father, from which extend a serpent, representing the mind, and wings, symbolizing the power. These 12 forces are regarded as the fabricators of the world. From them emanates the microcosm, expressed in the mystery of the 12 sacred animals, each representing 12 parts of the universe and correspondingly 12 parts of the human body. Anatomically, the 12 figures in the upper panel can be understood to symbolize the 12 convolutions of the brain, while the 12 figures in the lower panel correspond to the 12 zodiacal members and organs of the human body. Man is thus portrayed as a being formed by these 12 sacred animals, with his members and organs governed directly by the 12 powers residing in the brain. A deeper interpretation arises from the correspondence between the 12 figures in the upper panel and those in the lower. This connection offers a key to one of the most arcane ancient secrets, the relationship between the two great zodiacs, the fixed and the movable. The fixed zodiac is described as a vast dodecahedron, its 12 surfaces forming the outer walls of abstract space. From each surface of this dodecahedron, a great spiritual power radiates inward and becomes embodied as one of the hierarchies of the movable zodiac, a band of circumambulating fixed stars. Within this movable zodiac dwell the various planetary and elemental bodies. The relationship of these two zodiacs to the subzodiacal spheres finds a parallel in the human respiratory system. The great fixed zodiac may be likened to the atmosphere, the movable zodiac to the lungs, and the subzodiacal worlds to the body itself. The spiritual atmosphere, charged with the vivifying energies of the 12 divine powers of the fixed zodiac, is inhaled by the cosmic lungs, the movable zodiac, and distributed through the constitution of the 12 holy animals, which compose the parts and members of the material universe. The cycle completes as the poisonous effluvia from the lower worlds, collected by the movable zodiac, are exhaled into the fixed zodiac, where they are purified by passage through the divine nature of its 12 eternal hierarchies. The table as a whole invites many interpretations. If the border of the table, with its hieroglyphic figures, is taken as the spiritual source, then the throne at the center represents the physical body, within which human nature is enthroned. From this perspective, the entire table symbolizes the auric bodies of man, with a border forming the outer shell of the auric egg. Alternatively, if the throne is seen as a symbol of the spiritual sphere, the border represents the elements, and the various panels surrounding the center depict the worlds or planes emanating from the one divine source. Approached purely physically, the throne becomes a symbol of the generative system, revealing the secret embryological processes underlying the formation of the material worlds. If interpreted anatomically, the central throne stands for the heart, the ibomorphous triad for the mind, the Nephtian triad for the generative system, and the surrounding hieroglyphics for the various parts of the human body. From an evolutionary perspective, the central gate marks the point of both entrance and exit, illustrating the process of initiation where a candidate, having passed through ordeals, is finally brought into the presence of their own soul, something only the candidate can reveal. When cosmogony is considered, the central panel represents the spiritual worlds, the upper panel the intellectual worlds, and the lower panel the material worlds. The central panel may also stand for the 9 invisible worlds, with a creature marked T symbolizing physical nature, the footstool of Isis, the spirit of universal life. From an alchemical viewpoint, the central panel contains the metals, while the borders represent the alchemical processes. The figure seated on the throne is universal Mercury, the stone of the wise. The flaming canopy above is the divine sulfur, and the cube of earth beneath is elemental salt. The 3 triads, known as the paternal foundation in the central panel, symbolize the silent watchers, the 3 invisible aspects of human nature. The panels flanking this central section represent the quaternary lower nature of man. Within the central panel are figures that hold sacred significance to the sun, which is composed of 3 great powers, each bearing several attributes. Through Kabbalistic interpretation, this number reduces to the great triad. It is established that the Table of Isis has a direct connection to Egyptian Gnosticism. Evidence of this appears in a Gnostic papyrus housed in the Bodleian Library, which references the 12 fathers or paternities, beneath which lie 12 fountains, as noted in Egyptian Magic by SSDD. The lower panel's representation of the underworld is further reinforced by the depiction of 2 gates, the Great Gate of the East and the Great Gate of the West. According to Chaldean theology, The sun rises and sets through gates in the underworld, where it journeys during the hours of darkness. Since Plato studied under magi such as Pathanaith, Oecopes, Secnupis, and Etemon of Sebennythus for many years, his philosophy carries strong influences from Chaldean and Egyptian triadic systems. The Bembine Table serves as a diagrammatic expression of Platonic philosophy, encapsulating the entire theory of mystic cosmogony and creation. The best guide to interpreting this table lies in Proclus's commentaries on Plato's theology. Additionally, the Chaldean oracles attributed to Zoroaster contain numerous references to the theogonic principles reflected in the table. Hesiod's Theogony offers the most comprehensive account of Greek cosmogonic myth, while Orphic cosmogony has influenced various forms of philosophy and religion across Greek, Egyptian, and Syrian cultures. A central Orphic symbol is the mundane egg, from which fans emerged into the light. Thomas Taylor equates the Orphic egg with a mixture of bound and infinite described by Plato in the Philebus. Furthermore, the egg represents the third intelligible triad and serves as the true symbol of the demiurgus, whose auric body is the egg of the inferior universe. According to Eusebius, citing Porphyry, the Egyptians acknowledged a single intellectual creator known as Neph. They worshipped him in the form of a statue depicting a human figure with dark blue skin, holding a girdle and scepter, wearing a royal plume, and expelling an egg from his mouth, as described in an analysis of the Egyptian mythology. Although the Bembine Table is rectangular in shape, philosophically it signifies the Orphic egg of the universe with its contents. Within esoteric teachings, the highest individual achievement is the breaking of the Orphic egg, symbolizing the spirit's return to nirvana, the absolute state of Oriental mysticism. Samuel Boyce's New Pantheon includes illustrations of different sections of the Bembine Table, though he contributes little to the deeper understanding of the subject. In the mythology and fables of the ancients explained from history, the Abbé Bainier dedicates a chapter to the Mensa Isioca. After considering the views of Montfaucon, Kircher, and Pignorius, he concludes that it was likely a votive table, consecrated to Isis by a prince or private individual in gratitude for some benefit believed to have been granted by the goddess.